Prairie Mosaic is funded by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund with money from the vote of the people of Minnesota on November 4th, 2008. The North Dakota Humanities Council, a nonprofit, independent state partner of the National Endowment for the Humanities. The North Dakota Council on the Arts, and by the members of Prairie Public.
Hi, I'm Bob Danback, and welcome to Prairie Mosaic, a patchwork of stories about the people and the places that contribute to the arts, culture, and history in our region. On this edition, we'll head up north to visit a hockey town that's becoming a mecca for dancers. We'll ask the question, is big always better? And then hear a blend of bluegrass, pop, and jazz from a unique family band. The early history of Clay County was captured by two pioneering photographers who immigrated from Norway in the late 1800s, now preserved in the collection of the Heritage and Cultural Society of Clay County. The work of these two photographers give us a window into the life and times of early settlement on the prairie.
I'm a really lucky guy. I get to take care of all the photographs. There's so much cool stuff. The Flayton Wine collection is probably our biggest and our best. It's the combined collections of two photographers that worked here in Clay County, each for about 50 years or more. It's a tremendous collection, 15,500 glass plate negatives taken between 1879 and about 1940 or 45 or so. It's just a tremendous resource. The photographers are very different men. Their personalities are different, their approaches to photography, their background in photography is all very different, and that shows up in their work. Flayton, the Moorhead photographer, learned photography using the wet plate process in the 1870s, a very exacting, very demanding process. So many of his photos, even photos with people in them, are like still lifes. It took a long exposure and it was very difficult. You had to get it right the first time. So he's a very, very careful workman and placed people just so. Wang's work, he learned with the dry plate process, a much simpler process. His photography, though sometimes it's not well focused or it's overexposed or underexposed, not as technically brilliant as Flayton's, it often has a spontaneity and a humor to it that you really don't find in Flayton's stuff. These are studio portraits. He's taking the picture indoors, so it's a fairly long exposure, so he has to have some control over it. But more typical of his work is like this. It's grossly overexposed and underexposed on each side. But it's a great photo. It's has a snapshot sort of a quality to it. A bunch of guys skinny dipping in the Buffalo River with their horses after a long day of work, probably. This one over here, for instance, we don't know who this chap is right here. It's a great photo. It's probably a friend of Wang's. He's got these sleeves on, so we suspect he's a clerk of some kind. But Wang caught him snoozing one day and took his image. Flayton here in Moorhead was practically the only photographer in town for about 50 years. And he had a real strong sense of history. He realized, especially toward the end of his career in the 20s, that he wasn't just taking pictures for money or even for pleasure, but he was doing documentary photography. He knew that he was part of the history of the community, and the community had a long history, and he was documenting that. Well, this is a great photo. This is from the 1897 flood, one of the worst floods we've had in Fargo-Moorhead history. This is looking north on 4th Street in Moorhead from about 7th Avenue south. This is A.W. Bowman and Molly Otto out for a boat ride on 4th Street. This house right here, that's the O.M. Martinson House. That's the Rourke Art Gallery today. And you can see that this is the coulee that runs back through Concordia College's campus, and Prairie Home Cemetery, and the water obviously backed up into that in 1897. Then there's this one over here. This is from, of course, the ruins of the 1893 fire. It was a devastating fire that wiped out most of downtown Fargo in June of 1893. Started in a back of a store down on Main Avenue and Broadway, and there was a strong south wind that just swept the fire right through the middle of town. Burned up everything basically from 4th Street over to Robert Street, from what's now Main Avenue north, past the city limits. It actually started a prairie fire that extended another 3 miles out of town. Tremendous damage, made lots and lots of people homeless. Curiously, it had a positive effect on Fargo. Many of the buildings that were burned down were substandard, there were wood frame structures, and there was also in 1893, there was a nationwide depression on. There was a sudden influx of cash into the community from insurance settlements. So actually, in many ways, it gave Fargo kind of a boost. Many of the buildings in downtown Fargo now are remnants of the rebuilding that happened after that fire. You can learn a tremendous amount from just studying photographs. The collection came in kind of unusual in two separate sections. S.P. Wang worked in Hawley, and when he moved out of his photo studio around 1940 or so in downtown Hawley, he abandoned apparently the negatives in the attic. Many years later, a local attorney purchased the building, discovered the negatives, and brought them in. So we've got about 14,000 negatives that came in that way. Flayton's work was here in Moorhead. When he retired in 1929, he sold the business to a relative. That was also sold eventually to the Gross family. The Gross family found them in the studio. They brought in about 800 images that Flayton shot here in Moorhead, and we're really blessed to have those. O.E. Flayton was quoted in a Moorhead newspaper in 1914 as saying at that time, in 1914, he had 129,000 negatives in his collection. Most of them are studio portraits. Can you imagine the imagery that is of just about everybody in town, plus people from Fargo and all over the community? Well, unfortunately, his cousin apparently, when he took over the studio, sold the bulk of the negatives for a little tiny bit of metallic silver that exists in each black and white negative. And just for fractions of a cent apiece, they disappeared. If people find similar sorts of things, don't throw them away. Don't throw them away.
The small community of Roseau, Minnesota may be better known for hockey, but it's also becoming a mecca for young dancers. The dance studio, led by teacher and choreographer Karen Anger, is a hub for more than 50 young dancers who study tap, jazz, and ballet. Dance is not an easy art and requires commitment, not just by the dancers, but by their parents and their teacher.
5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4. Second, cross, turn.
I'm a Cecchetti teacher, and Cecchetti is French and Italian, so all of my classes are taught in French.
Changement, 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 releve.
I don't say bend your knees to the little kids. I'll say plie. Now when we plie, we're going to bend our knees, so I add the two together. It's very detailed. You've got 3 primer levels, A, B, and C, and then you've got the older levels, grades 1 through 4, and then you've got the intermediate and advanced levels where the kids keep progressing up.
To be able to be in a small community, and especially one as rural and as far north as Roseau, and have these opportunities for our kids to be part of something this spectacular, it's beyond my expectations.
My husband, we were in Illinois, and he was an electrical engineer at Bridgestone Firestone, and I like to cross-country ski. And so I said, honey, you got to get me someplace where there's snow and cold, because I need my seasons. So we ended up here.
Turn, turn, and chasse.
Kids are really into instant gratification. They want everything now. And dance is about working for it and mastering it and getting the technique down.
Lift.
It's not as easy as it looks. You gotta take training and you gotta be able to do the right foot positions and stuff.
The ballet gives you your foundation for everything that you have to learn how to do. That's where your pirouettes come from, that's where your leaps come from, that's where your extension of your leg and your toe and your knee turn out and your hip turn out. That's where everything starts from. I have a list every fall that starts out with what steps I want the kids to accomplish, and I check them off as we get to them. Everything progresses. The older they get, the more technical it gets. So it's all these little details that add up to getting a better dancer.
It teaches character, it teaches discipline, but also through all that you can see that through all the hard work you can have the fun that comes out when you perform real well afterwards.
When you get on the stage and you actually do what you're told and then at the end they clap for you, it makes yourself feel good.
When they get it, the smile on their face, that's what it's all about. When they beam and you give them a thumbs up that they got the step, That's better than anything.
I suggest you do a nice little bird arabesque.
I didn't have the body type. I knew that wasn't an option, and I knew I wanted to teach dance. I wanted to be able to bring better things to my dancers. I like to be behind the scenes and creating it for everybody else to see. That's a joy.
Stomp, brush, hop, shuffle, step, full lap, step, stomp.
I kind of dissect the songs in counts of 8, and then I pick the class that I'm going to go to, and I consolidate all the steps that they already currently know that they have a stockpile of, and then I pick steps that they haven't learned yet to add in there to keep it fresh for them.
Up, second. Up, second.
There's a lot of little tiny details you have to remember. Before recital time, I sometimes get like, what am I doing? Because I get so nervous and it gets crazy, but it's always worth it.
All the movements have counts, so they know they have to get to a certain place at a certain time. And I make them count out the steps when we're doing it, but some of it is innate. Some of them, they have the extra little grace that they do the movements with. Grace is kind of an individual basis because you can have a very technical dancer and you can have a very graceful dancer. And it's a joy when you get both of them together.
Having 2 children in dance that dance at different times, there's a time commitment. There's also the financial part of it, but I think it's worth every penny we pay for it.
You know who's going to want to be in dance class by the amount of hard work that they're putting in. If the child wants to do a solo, they'll be out in front, and they'll put themselves out in front. The child that does not want to do a solo or does not want to be in the front row will put themselves somewhere else.
First, we're just going to get our places.
I'm not going to make a better dancer by forcing them to do something that they're uncomfortable doing. And if I've got a child who will dance their heart out in the second row, I will let them dance their heart out, because that's going to give me a better class, and it's going to give me a stronger performance if they're dancing where they feel safe at. I'm teaching it, but they have to do the steps, and so they're in control of everything. They're thinking about what they're doing, they're executing it, and that's quite an accomplishment.
It helps with footwork and with sports and stuff. I'm in 4 sports, so just helps out, and it's fun.
Get in your row.
I don't think any dance teacher is a pushover. You can't teach kids without being assertive, because otherwise they'd run right over you. I mean, I had 19 teenagers up on stage during that group ballet number. They all need to be doing the same thing, so you need to get everybody where they're supposed to be doing, and they need to respect you, that you're going to get them to where they need to be.
I don't know if I would be a professional dancer, but I definitely want to continue dancing in some way.
Hopefully, a couple will go on. Some of them, I'm glad to have taught them and given that appreciation so that they will introduce it to their children.
Is bigger always better? When we strive for better efficiency in agriculture, do we sacrifice a lifestyle and our sense of community? We'll explore those questions and more in a segment entitled Economic Efficiency from the Prairie Public North Dakota Humanities Council project, Key Ingredients.
As every farmer knows, efficiency is an important equation that you can't ignore. But I think there are a lot of misconceptions about efficiency. We have this notion somehow that the bigger you get, the more efficient you become. That there's that almost locked-in relationship. And so if you aren't going to get bigger, you're going to be less efficient, and therefore you're not going to survive.
Something that's efficient has little wasted motion and produces an outcome with a minimal effort. The goal of that is to conserve energy and avoid waste. But the efficiencies that are gained in the economic system, especially in the food system, have the reverse effect.
And I started to think about, some of my friends who farm, who now are farming 25,000 acres. Well, you figure at that rate, you got to really be efficient, right? But at least 1/4 section of one of my friends who farms 25,000 acres is 100 miles from the farm. It takes a lot more energy and time, et cetera, to plant and harvest that quarter section than the one that's next to the farmstead. So you start to lose efficiencies as you get larger.
The problem is not technology, it's our use and our philosophy of technology, that there is no limits to what we can do. So if we have a problem, we will just apply technology and overcome that problem. Economic efficiency can measure cost benefits in economic terms, but some of the costs and benefits that we have to consider are not economic and they can't be quantified. For example, how do you know if somebody is happy? Okay, how do you measure that in quantifiable terms? How do you measure the value of the work that earthworms do in the soil? What is the economic value of the beauty of a native prairie? Okay? We can't put these things into an accounting ledger, tally it up, and say, we have economically achieved this in the most efficient way possible, because it can't measure that for us. There's no tool to do that.
Where we're at right now is 75% of our total food and agriculture is being produced by just 195,442 farms in this country. And 30% of those farmers are over age 65 and only 5% are under age 35.
In America right now, 2% of Americans make their living by farming. So that means that 98% of Americans are in the consumer end of the equation on this one. So we've got a very small sector actually producing and a large sector looking for their next fix. And I worry over that if we don't get more people understanding and participating in the producing end of this equation, that one of these days we'll go to the supermarket and there's not going to be something for our next fix. And then what are we going to do? So if we think about the economic efficiency of two farmers farming the same amount of land that 30 farmers used to be able to farm. It's more economically efficient if 2 guys and 2 tractors can do that job instead of 30 guys doing that job. So on a strict balance scale, okay, just costs, inputs, and output, we say that is definitely more economically efficient. The problem is that we didn't ask what the goal was. Okay? The goal was never economic efficiency. The goal was things that matter to people. And when people are asked about what is it that you really love or value about life, they don't say economic efficiency. They say things like, I want to be able to put my kids through college. I want them to have a better life than I had. I want to be able to get together with my neighbors and live in a safe community. You know, I want my kids to be able to go to a good public school. So what is the implications of just having 2 farmers where there was once 30? Suddenly your kid has to travel 60 miles round trip to get to a town that has a school anymore. You've lost 30 families in your community. So now the businesses like the hardware store, the restaurants now aren't economically viable anymore. So these are things that we don't often measure by economic efficiency, and we can't measure. But we need to keep those values and goals front and center and keep economic efficiency in its place.
Efficiency isn't a measure of happiness. It may be a measure of the opposite of happiness. So I think what we need to become, rather than talking about efficient food systems, is we should talk about food systems that make us happy. And raising a garden and sharing your produce with your neighbor makes me happy, and having a food system that produces local nutritious food that I can buy, still affordable prices, makes a lot of people happy. So that would be my advice to people, is get off the word efficient and talk about systems that make us happy and healthy.
The Johnson Family Band is a collection of musicians from the Fargo-Moorhead area that came together from a variety of musical backgrounds to celebrate a common love of folk music. Their original songs are rooted with a traditional mountain feeling. It's a mix of bluegrass, jazz, and pop that makes them unique. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the Johnson Family Band.
laughter and cards. My mama told me, son, you're bound to lose. I'm bound to lose, bound to lose. Oh, yeah, I'm bound to lose. I'm bound to lose, bound to lose. Oh, yeah, I'm bound to lose.
We're often asked to describe what type of music we play because a lot of people are unfamiliar with what we do. What we do isn't strictly bluegrass. We're influenced by a lot of other different sounds. Probably the biggest influence on us is old-time fiddle music, pre-bluegrass actually. But we get lumped into the bluegrass genre a lot because it's had a big influence on us. We often describe ourselves as a neo-old-timey band.
Yes, it's stronger in my life, baby, mine. Yes, it's stronger in my life, now you'll never be my wife. It's stronger in my life, baby, mine. My head on your breast, baby, mine. With my head on your breast, baby, mine. With my head on your breast, where alone you take my rest. My head on your breast, baby, mine. About to be, baby, mine. Other man's about to be, baby, mine. Other man's about to be, Lord, I'm drowning in the sea. Other man's about to be, baby, mine. Warm as your breath, baby, mine. I'm as warm as your breath, baby, mine. I'm as warm as your breath, and it's sure to be my death. As warm as your breath, baby, mine. Baby, mine. In the ground now you lay, baby, mine. In the ground now you lay, on the gallows I was way. The ground now you lay, baby, mine.
Thank you for joining us for this edition of Prairie Mosaic. If you know of an artist, a topic, or an organization in our region that you think might make an interesting segment, please contact us at prairiemosaic@prairiepublic.org. For Prairie Mosaic, I'm Bob Dambach.
Prairie Mosaic is funded by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund with money from the vote of the people of Minnesota on November 4th, 2008. The North Dakota Humanities Council, a nonprofit, independent state partner of the National Endowment for the Humanities. The North Dakota Council on the Arts, and by the members of Prairie Public.